Hello everyone. Today we will give a brief introduction to Python. Coming to the background, Python was developed by Mr. Van Rossum in the year 1991. The basic reason was to make it easy to use, and the main focus was the simplicity and code readability. So if you look at the Python code, you would feel as if you are reading English language. It was designed in such a manner so that anybody would be able to read the code very easily. Now, the first question that somebody might have is why learn Python? We have so many different languages that we can use for coding, so why Python? The first reason is that Python is extremely versatile. That is, you can use Python for almost any kind of domain, be it the medical field or let's say the manufacturing in industries or the banking sector. Take take any kind of domain that you would be interested in, and you would see some companies, could be some startups or could be some big companies which actually work on Python and give their output in Python. Secondly, Python is very easy to learn. It's an object-oriented language. So it is designed to be extremely logical and extremely clear. So it is very easy to read those particular Python codes and try and learn the language. The next and the most important thing that you will see for Python is that we have an extremely supportive community. So if you have any particular kind of doubt and if you do a simple Google search, you will see that the doubt which you are having is more or less always asked by somebody else and the answer is already given. So we have an extremely supportive community for the Python language, which is actually going to make our life easier, especially when we are in the learning phase. Now, what are the tasks that can be usually done using Python? The first and the foremost task that can be done is automation. That is, if you want to automate simpler tasks, like let's say you want to search for a particular file, or you want to scrape some information from a website, or let's say you have a specific task that you do on a regular basis. Let's say you're opening a few Excel files and you're doing some calculations. Those particular tasks can easily be automated using Python. Second and the most important task that can be done using Python is machine learning. These days, machine learning is one of the buzzwords where people want to learn machine learning. And using Python, we can actually do our machine learning tasks, create models, and get our desired outputs. And the next most interesting task that you can do using Python is create your own websites. So we have particular libraries like Django and Flask which can be used to create our own website. So Python is extremely versatile, and you'd always have some package or the other that is already present, or maybe the package is written by somebody else for the tasks that you want to achieve. Lastly, if you're creating any kind of dashboards, so even dashboard creation can be done using Python. So when it comes to dashboard, the two most popular libraries are Plotly and Dash. These using these two libraries, you can create very colorful and visually appealing dashboards with ease. Now, when it comes to data science and the machine learning piece, why Python is more preferred over any other language is that we can analyze a lot of huge amounts of data very easily. So let's say you have a very huge amount of data, and if you try to open it using, let's say, Excel, then because Excel cannot handle very high amount volume of data, sometimes it so happens that Excel could slow down. But when it comes to loading the same amount of data in Python, it can be done and it can also be processed very quickly. The next fundamental task that you can do with regards to machine learning is that you can create your own visualizations. So we have very powerful libraries like Matplotlib, Seaborn, Plotly, etc., which can be used to create very very beautiful visualizations and with very little amount of code. So for example, if I speak of, let's say, Seaborn, so using Seaborn within just one line of code you can get your graph. So using Python can be very easy, and it can also make sure that your task is actually performed at a very fast pace compared to any other language, because the amount of code that you have to write is also minimum compared to every other language. So if I have to compare Python with, let's say, C programming, in C programming you have to actually declare your variables first and then use those variables in your code. And let's say you have declared the variable a, and you have declared it as an integer. And while coding, let's say if you want to convert a from integer to a character for some reason or a string for some reason, then C programming will not actually allow you to do that, because already this variable is declared as an integer. So it was going to throw an error. Whereas if you provide the same task in Python, you can easily change the data type of Python without having any error. So Python is more of a dynamically typed language, which actually permits you to make these kind of changes. This particular thing can be a good thing and also a bad thing. It's a good thing because we don't have to actually keep on declaring our particular variables as a specific data type, and we can change it according to our need. But why am I saying it can be a bad thing? Is because when you actually write your code, and let's say if you have written very lengthy amount of code, let's say you have written a particular code line of, let's say, 1,000 lines for completing a specific task. In this 1,000 lines, if you make an error, and now because Python is dynamically programmed, you can actually, it will not actually throw one particular error. It is going to simply change it. So it becomes a bit tedious to when you're actually debugging your code. So that is the reason I'm saying that it can also be a little tricky and it can be banned in that manner. But it's left to the user as to how he or she writes the particular code lines. Okay, now, so talking about coding, the next question that comes up in our mind is, what do we use to write our Python codes? So we have IDEs, or the integrated development environments, that are present for doing our coding. So there are three types of IDEs that are present and which are very popular. One is the Jupyter Notebook. The Jupyter Notebook is actually very advantageous for beginners or people who are just starting out. This is because when you write any code in the Jupyter Notebook, you automatically see the output just below the input line. So you know exactly what is being executed and how Python is actually, what kind of output is Python giving you. That is very clear in a notebook environment. And the next very good thing about the notebook environment is that you can write your particular notes or let's say comments using something called as a markdown. So markdowns actually help you to write these particular comments so that if you complete a particular task and you come back later, you'll be able to see exactly what you have done. Now, the next best thing about the Jupyter Notebook is that whenever you're doing some kind of visualizations, instead of a separate window popping up with the visualization, you actually get to see the visualization just below the code line. So that is the one reason why Jupyter Notebooks is very popular for people who are just starting out in Python. The next option that you can choose is PyCharm or Spider. Both PyCharm and Spider are advanced level IDEs where you can actually write lot of different code. And by that I mean very large programs like the one which I mentioned where you're actually writing out 1,000 line or let's say 1,500 lines of code for completing a task. So when you have such a huge task to be completed and you're trying to break it into different chunks, you can always use the PyCharm IDEs. Now, PyCharm or Spider has one advantage over Jupyter Notebook is that it is a complete or a full-blown IDE. So Jupyter Notebooks usually the format is the .py notebook format, which is not directly you cannot open it directly like you can open an exe file. But when you are using PyCharm or Spider, you want to generate what are known as .py files. And .py files can be easily opened like you're opening any file on, let's say, if you're on a Windows system and you're trying to open a particular exe file, you simply double click it and the file will open. Similarly, when you're double clicking a .py file, it directly opens. But you cannot do the same thing using a Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook, you have to specifically use the Jupyter Notebook environment to open the .py, .ip NV files, or which is known as IPython notebook files. Now, the third variety that we have are the general text editors. Now, we have a lot of different text editors that are available. Two of the most popular ones are one is Atom and the other is Sublime Text. Now, text editors can actually be used for working with different file types, and we usually have you can actually customize your text editor with a lot of different plugins depending on your requirement. And one advantage of a text editor is that it's not specifically designed for Python. So let's say if you're talking about Jupyter Notebooks, if we're talking about PyCharm, these things are specifically designed keeping Python in mind. But when you talk about text editors, it is not specific to only one language. Using text editors, you can actually use multiple languages. So that is the reason why even text editors are also popular. This is what I have for you as the basics of Python. So Thank you very much.